Hello students, welcome back. In today's lecture, we're going to discuss red blood cell production. We've already discussed the how of red blood cell production. In this lecture, we're going to focus on the why. Why would you need to make more red blood cells? There are several superficial reasons why you would need to make red blood cells. Let's list a few of those reasons. The first one could be that you've been in an accident. Let's say maybe you're stabbed by a unicorn and you lost a lot of blood, and so you need to make more red blood cells to replace the ones that are lost. And so let's put here. For our first reason, let's put stabbing by unicorn. Let's list another reason. Let's say you live in Livingston, Alabama, which is very close to sea level. Let's say you move to Denver, which is at a much greater elevation. At this elevation, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere is going to be lower, and so you're going to have much less oxygen in your blood. And so for this reason, you would need to make more red blood cells. And so for our second reason, we'll put higher elevation. For number three, let's say that some aliens come to Earth and they siphon off our atmosphere. And so when they do this, our atmospheric pressure is going to be much lower, and so much less oxygen is going to be able to get down to where we are. And so the fourth reason, let's put alien siphoning of atmosphere. For number four, let's say that our planet becomes uninhabitable. We can no longer live here. And so let's say that Mr. Spock's descendants invite us to live on Vulcan with them. And let's say their atmosphere is not 21% like it is here, but it's only 15%. So there's going to be much less oxygen. And so for that reason, there's going to be much less oxygen in our blood. And for this reason, we would need to make more red blood cells. For our fourth reason, we'll put that we have to live on Vulcan. For our fifth reason, let's say that a mad scientist produces a microorganism that destroys most of the plants on Earth. When this happens, there'll be no plants to produce our oxygen. And so the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere is going to be lower. There's going to be less oxygen in our blood. And for this reason, we would need to produce more red blood cells. And so here are 5 reasons why we would need to make more red blood cells. Now, the one thing that these all have in common is that they all result in a lower amount of oxygen in our blood. And so what our body does, for whatever reason, if there's less oxygen in our blood, the body responds to this by producing more red blood cells. It matters not what the reason is. If the body senses less oxygen in the blood, it responds to this by producing more red blood cells. And so this lecture will be devoted to the process of responding to lowered oxygen and producing red blood cells. So let us begin. There are several components involved here. We're going to need 2 organs to sense the lowered oxygen, and we're going to need another structure of the body to produce the red blood cells. We're going to need to draw the red blood cells themselves, and we're going to need to represent the blood and the oxygen in the blood. And so let's next get rid of our reasons and diagram those 5 components. Okay, so here we have our components. We have the blood itself with a low oxygen concentration. We have 2 organs here which sense the lower oxygen in the blood. We'll name them later. Here we have a bone, and in the ends of these bones, we have the site of production of our blood cells. And we have that here. Here we have our red blood cells, and then this will be our resulting blood. And so let's see what happens here. The first thing that happens here is that we have a very low oxygen concentration, or insufficient oxygen in our blood. As this blood travels through these 2 organs here, these organs sense an insufficient oxygen concentration. And in response to this, they synthesize the hormone which produces red blood cells. And so for now, let's just call this hormone the red blood cell hormone. And so these 2 organs synthesize the red blood cell hormone. You've seen this one earlier, but we won't name it yet. And so once the red blood cell hormone is produced, it's going to stimulate this red substance in our bones to produce red blood cells. This red substance in bone produces red blood cells, and we'll name that shortly. So now we're going to produce more red blood cells. There are going to be more red blood cells in the blood. So let's indicate this here. And so now we're going to have more red blood cells in circulation. And with more red blood cells in circulation, the blood is now capable of carrying more oxygen. And with more oxygen in the blood, the problem is corrected. So let's go through the entire process again, annotating some things. So initially, we have decreased oxygen. The problem of decreased oxygen in the blood is known as hypoxia or hypoxemia. The 2 organs that actually sense the hypoxia are the liver and kidneys. The liver and the kidney produce the red blood cell stimulating hormone, and this hormone is known as erythropoietin or EPO. The EPO goes to this red structure inside the bone, stimulating red blood cell production, and that structure is called the red bone marrow. Remember, in adults, our red bone marrow is found in our axial skeletal system and in the proximal epiphyses of our long bones. You should remember that from Anatomy and Physiology 1. What I've drawn here is the proximal end of the femur. And so the red bone marrow, stimulated by the production of EPO, increases its production of our red blood cells. And the red blood cells now are capable of carrying more oxygen. And so the amount of oxygen in the blood increases, correcting the problem of hypoxia. And so this explains why red blood cells are made. So whenever there is hypoxia, for whatever the reason, the body responds to this problem by producing more red blood cells. And so this concludes our lecture on low oxygen concentration in the blood. I hope that you've learned a lot.